Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you. We are very excited to welcome you to our webinar about the topic climate risk assessment. And my name is Karin, and I'm the founder and CEO at Leadership and Sustainability. At Leadership and Sustainability, we help our clients actively reduce their sustainability footprint. We provide end-to-end sustainability strategy services, from strategy development and implementation support across environmental and social topics to supply chain management solutions. With a global team of over 80 experts, we offer verification, training, and advisory service to ensure practical and measurable results. And with me today, I have Caitlin. Caitlin, would you like to say a few words about yourself, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Excited to be here with you today. I'm Caitlin Moeller. I am a Sustainability Solutions Advisor with Worldly. Worldly is a data intelligence and insights platform. We have the largest network of consumer goods supplier data from the HIG FEM, and we also host multiple other sustainability insights and data tools like the product impact calculator, the brand and retail module, the HIG MSI, as well as Worldly Axion and the Insights Hub, which I will be speaking to you today about.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. And once again, welcome to this webinar. And we are curious about from where you are logging in. If you can find the chat function, why don't you just send from which city or which location you are logging in from today? I'll just send you a message. Here is the chat message. I think someone is sending something in the Q&A. It says that the window is disabled. Okay, then let's do it via Q&A then. Thanks for letting me know. So if you open the Q&A window there, you should be able to send in from where you are. Jordan, someone from Vancouver. Caitlin, a friend of yours, probably.
Maybe.
Cornwall, UK, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Vietnam, already evening over there, India, Myanmar, Germany, Yangon, Myanmar, Malmö, Sweden. Okay, my home country. Great. Wonderful. Nice to have you here, everyone. And with that, let me continue. So we will actually be using the Q&A function today, so perhaps it's as good as that the chat function is disabled. You are actually on mute today because we have quite a lot of participants today, and we just want to make sure that we have a good audio quality. But you can send us questions via the Q&A function. Please take this opportunity. This is the opportunity you have us live here to ask your questions and send them then via the Q&A function and not in the chat, but obviously that would anyway not be possible. We will make the presentation, so a PDF of the slides, excuse me, and the recording we will make available to you after the webinar. And so let us briefly review the webinar structure for today. We will talk about why climate risks are critical, and then we will give you an overview of the most common climate risks and opportunities, and we'll discuss how these are typically clustered. We will then move forward. We're talking about the steps in conducting a climate risk assessment. Following that, we will discuss some practical examples, how identified climate risk assessment results play in, and we will close then today's webinar with a Q&A session. And I skipped actually in number 4, namely the synergies between Worldly, Axion, and the leadership and sustainability tools. So that is really the purpose of this webinar. At Leadership and Sustainability, we have developed a methodology for climate risk assessments. And together with the Axion tool of Worldly, this is a really good partnership, and you will see how our different tools can work together. So why are climate risks assessments are critical? And here I would like to hand over to Caitlin.
Yes. So the planet is warming. We're seeing these impacts in real time, and they're impacting real people. By 2030, if mitigation is not accelerated, the number of climate-related disasters could be up to 40% higher than in 2015, according to the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. If you want to click, Karen. And then we're also seeing that there is higher risk in lower to middle income countries. There's higher exposure to climate hazards than in developed economies. And these economies have the least capacity to adapt. Not only are these impacts showing up in the lives of people day to day, but it's also impacting business. If you go to the next slide, we can really start to dive into the idea that resilience is no longer optional. It is truly an imperative. In a slow transition scenario without sufficient climate adaptation, up to 4.4% of global GDP, or about $4.86 trillion, could be lost annually by 2050. The cumulative global financial loss due to heat stress alone is expected to reach 2.4 trillion in lost working hours by 2030. This is equivalent to 80 million full-time jobs. And even if we can adapt and achieve a 2-degree Celsius warming scenario, companies could still see up to a 25% EBITDA loss, with a significant portion of these losses coming from a decrease in production capacity. And one study from the University of Maryland and a supply chain mapping firm, Resilient, looked at 12,000 supplier sites and found that only 11% were prepared for climate disruption despite being in high-risk locations. So the imperative to business is very, very real, and we're starting to see it measured in many economic ways.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. And furthermore, we also have regulatory pressure and stakeholder expectations that demand for climate risk assessments. There are expanding mandatory climate disclosure requirement. There is also the need for some or many companies to align with frameworks such as the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the TCFD. And there are several EU regulatory drivers, including the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And all in all, one can say that ESG performance starts influencing also access to financing. So let me now give you an overview of the climate risks and opportunities. In order to build up your climate assessment in a systematic way, we have an overview of climate risks and opportunities, and this is aligned with the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, but you can actually also adapt and adjust as you see fit. And here we can see now the transitional risks that are policy and legal, technology, market, and reputation. We have the physical risks, the acute one, but also the chronic one. And on the other hand, and this is, in my view, always important as well, to not only look at the risks, but also look at what are the opportunities. So there are opportunities for resource efficiency. We know very well that we need to save energy, we need to save other resources as well. And so this goes hand in hand and is really a good opportunity, sometimes also with a financial benefit. Then we have the energy sources, so we can change over from to renewable energy, for example. We have the products and services that can be adjusted, have markets, and then also, of course, one opportunity, which is really resilience. And I think probably all of us would agree today that we need a lot of resilience in today's world. And so climate risk is a catalyst for business transformation, and an early risk identification enables actually strategic advantage. Resilience investments can reduce losses and unlock value. Climate adaptation and mitigation are also growth drivers. And in the end, a proactive climate strategy enhances long-term enterprise value. And of course, there are always also low-hanging fruits. There are short-term benefits. But if we look at the numbers that Caitlin just covered with us, we see that there is an absolute and urgent need to start now in order also to have that midterm and long-term effect. And now let me just speak at quite a high level about how to conduct a climate risk assessment at a corporate level. And so we have at Leadership and Sustainability, we have developed a climate risk assessment methodology that is aligned with the double materiality approach of CSRD. And it works along the entire value chain. We always look at the entire value chain because you have risks and opportunities along the value chain. Yes, significant for a brand, significant impacts are in the supply chain, but also further upstreams and also downstreams. And in your own operations, you have a significant impact and you have significant risks and opportunities. And for the double materiality approach, it is really important that you cover and include the entire value chain. And then it can be used also as a standalone approach, or you can use it also for TCFD, for the Task Force on Climate-Related Disclosures, as a support or applied to that. And the assessment along that value chain, this is something that we at Leadership and Sustainability, we have done for many years from the very beginning, and even personally, when I have worked at other companies previously, I have been working with this value chain approach, looking at impacts, risks, and opportunities. So it's a long-standing method that we have now also adapted to climate risks. And the climate assessment, it should review specific climate-related risks and opportunities, their financial impacts, and the related time horizon for business function, so along the value chain of your company. So it is important to not focus only on general risks, but the risks actually related to your own company operations. Because every company is unique. Yes, you may have similar operations, but every company is unique. You have your specific value chain. You have the specific countries where you are sourcing from, the number of suppliers, the size of the suppliers, the type of products that you produce. That will, of course, also influence the assessment. When we have adjusted this materiality assessment to the climate risk assessment, we have aligned with the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, because as you saw in the structure, it's very comprehensive and it really covers everything that you need to know. It is possible to simplify it a bit if you wish, and adjust it also accordingly. And then what are the steps? So we suggest working along 7 steps. The first one is to define the value chain segments to be assessed. So you need to know, how is my company structured? What are the different business functions that we have? What does our supply chain look like? What does the downstream business look like? And then to define the climate scenarios. So this can be, for example, which temperatures are we going to assess? Are we going to assess for 1.5 degrees, for 3 degrees, or perhaps even for worse, for a real worst case scenario. Because of course, depending on the temperature scenario that you choose, your assessment will look different and the risks will look different. And of course, for a higher temperature scenario, it will be just much more severe, and the risks will be more significant. And then predefine the rating criteria, of course. How do you want to exactly conduct the assessment? And this is where, of course, where we have rating criteria that we support with. Then to assess the risks and opportunities and also the related financial impacts, including the time dimension. So not only the temperature scenarios, but also you can structure the assessment with, for example, short, mid, long term. You need then to decide how many years is short term, how many years is mid term, what is long term, and then your assessment can be developed based on all those different dimensions. And then, of course, you will also look at what do we have in place already. That's really important to know what do I already have, which measures have I already taken. Because, of course, if you look at your own impact, your own risks and opportunities without any measures, you have a certain risk scenario. But if you then take into account, yes, but I'm actually already doing this. I'm already working with my suppliers on HIG-FEM, for example. I'm already asking them to define climate-related targets, or I'm working with the MCAP, the Manufacturers Climate Action Program. Then, of course, your assessment will also be adjusted based on that. So we very often will look at both, without any measures and with measures. And then you will have your results per climate scenario, and of course also per time horizon. And then you can do like a hotspot review and a gap identification. So when you look at your assessment results, you will have, we usually work on a scale from 1 to 5. So for example, 5 is very significant as a risk or an opportunity. This would be a hotspot, of course. And if you have very low numbers or some low numbers, you may then conclude that these are less important risks or opportunities for yourself. And then what should then be assessed? Yeah, we talked about that, the risks and the related financial impacts in a negative sense then, and the opportunities and possibly then the positive financial impacts. And talking about climate and energy, I may have mentioned this in other webinars, but in my view, it is really important to start with saving energy. If you are working on a specific climate action plan, you should begin by trying to reduce your energy consumption. And then after that, you can look at renewable energies, etc. Because at the end of the day, it is really important, what is my actual energy consumption? And here you may have significant low-hanging fruits. If you haven't started yet and you do the low-hanging fruits, the simpler things, you can actually save money. And then, of course, with the more advanced measures, you can save more money. So this is also really a good business case. Then you look at your company's status, and for example, in this case, 3 different time horizons and 2 climate scenarios. This is, of course, something you can adjust to have only 2 different time horizons, to have 3 climate scenarios. It depends on what exact purpose you have with your assessment. And that was really briefly about the method that we have. In the appendix that you will receive also with this presentation, there are a few more slides that show you some high-level results from such an assessment, just as an example. And with that, I will hand over to Caitlin.
Thank you, Karen. So now we'll discuss some of the synergies between Worldly Axion and the Leadership and Sustainability TCFD tools. So we can see that within the assessment, there are many steps. They will require a lot of data. And this is where Worldly Axion can really support the work that leadership and sustainability is doing. So if you go to the next slide, please, we'll talk a little bit about data structure. So data is a crucial part of assessments and action plans. And the challenge that really exists today is bringing all of this data together. It requires a multidisciplinary approach with expertise on climate, your business, and your value chain. And it's a lot of disparate areas to bring data from together. So climate risk and transition plans also can remain largely unpriced or potentially poorly integrated into strategic planning, with executives really wanting context-aware and decision support. But legacy models are relying on static or outdated anecdotal information, which can create a critical gap in your risk mitigation and your strategic actions. With Worldly Axion, we are moving to an actionable and accurate supply chain set of insights for retail and consumer goods, combining granular, verified data from facilities with macro level data from dozens of external data sets to give a true picture of risk and opportunities and help companies prepare for the future. Next slide. So what does this look like? Bringing all of these multiple insights together, you can really get a sense of what's happening inside your supply chain and what's happening in the world around it. And this is really built on the foundation of trusted primary facility data from HIG-FEM. We know that every company already has valuable information about its own supply chain, data from supplier facilities on energy use, carbon emissions, water use, production volumes, and more. And this is really what the baseline of Axion is built on, that data that's collected by the HIG-FEM. So putting that supply chain data into context is where we're integrating these external data sets. And these include data sets on climate and energy systems from the International Energy Agency and NGFS that project carbon prices, energy cost, and decarbonization pathways under different policy and macroeconomic scenarios. So as Karen described, picking those different scenarios, this is one way the Axion tool could support that work. We also have information on electricity grid mix from Ember, showing quickly how national grids are shifting to renewables to give you an insight into what is coming. Does one national grid seem to be accelerating faster into renewables? And does that change your risk assessment or your strategies? We have water risk data from the World Resource Institute Aqueduct Project, measuring water stress and demand at the basin level in combination with meteorological data on near and medium-term conditions of drought. So you can take into water risk and potential drought scenario into account. We have climate projections from CMIP6 models, simulating how key variables such as temperature, humidity, wind speeds, precipitation, and more are expected to change in the future under different climate scenarios. Risk and impact models using scientific techniques and sources to model likelihood, intensity, and potential impacts of hazards like heat stress, floods, wildfires at specific supplier locations. We have occupational health data to connect climate conditions like heat and humidity to worker productivity and well-being. And we also have market data for such as emissions trading systems from the World Bank and renewable energy certificate availability. So many data sets layered over that primary FEM data. And then we have added in a generative AI functionality to allow you to rapidly analyze these data sets in the context of your primary data. So this can help identify optimal combinations of renewable energy sources and adaptive measures, considering factors like energy pricing, renewable energy availability, and operational risk. So altogether, Worldly Axion brings dozens of data sources that track how the world is changing environmentally, climatically, and economically. And really, this is all focused on turning data into risk and opportunity insights. And there are 5 areas within the platform that allow you to do this. So we have a carbon and energy section, a water section, heat stress, extreme events, and there's also facility benchmarking. So if you go to the next slide, all of this combines to help you, back one. All of this combines to help you transform facility data into executive level insights to pinpoint where to reduce impact and mitigate risk, validate your strategies, prioritize your actions, and enables engagement with facilities within the full context of their opportunity. So now we're going to take a look at some of the examples of what this looks like within the tool. So Karen, if you would go to the next slide. Here we will see the carbon dashboard, and you can see the regional hotspots based on the FEM data for the facilities. You could specifically open the Axion Assistant and type in a question related to carbon targets within Thailand. And you can see that it quickly returns a response based on the question. So you can look at that dashboard and garner those insights yourself, or if you need a quicker way, or you want to maybe check what your assumptions are or what your actions are, the Axion Assistant is tuned to your specific data within the tool. Go to the next slide. We know that a resilient supply chains really is rooted in better intelligence. So one of the really important things we can do to help support resilience within the supply chain is understand where disruption risk exists. So within the water dashboard, you'll see a plotting of facilities here where you can see who is, or the number of facilities in very high vulnerability as very high exposure. So looking at both the amount of production, or kind of how vulnerable a company's production would be given the amount of water stress in the area. So that is what is overlaid in these 2 axes on the disruption risk. And this also correlates to a facility map on the right. So you can pinpoint where those 6 facilities that are coming in the very high area, or even realize earlier in your assessment, maybe working with leadership and sustainability, to see that you have 232 suppliers that don't have a response. So this is a large inherent risk because there's a hole in the data. Next slide. You can also use Axion to help you identify a path to hit decarbonization targets faster. Moving back to the carbon dashboard here, you have the ability to allocate production volume. So you can really dive into which facilities have a material impact on your decarbonization strategy and prioritize those. You'll see in the lower left, I have 50 to 75% allocated here, and that is updated in the facilities list you see on screen. You can also then sort and filter by the metrics on the top. So I have sorted by high carbon intensity as well as coal usage to help hone in on which facilities I may want to engage with coal use reduction or increase on-site renewables, and explore areas where EACs or RECs are used, are available, and support these facilities that do have carbon targets set in reaching their goals. Next slide, please. And then, as I said, on the interactive map, you can click into suppliers. You can also click from the screen we just saw with the anonymized supplier information here, and you can actually see a detailed supplier scorecard or risk profile. Here I have the section on heat stress focused in, so we can see that this particular facility is at very high risk for heat stress exposure and doesn't have climate control in place. And then we can see that that puts a risk of productivity loss at 29%. And if you come to a sourcing team with this, or if you're a facility and you want to, mitigate risk within your ability to produce, you can see that implementing a climate control measure or even installing fans, making sure workers have adequate breaks to kind of mitigate that heat stress exposure can have a dramatic impact on productivity and worker well-being. Next slide. And then we also have a scenario planning section within the tool. We talked a little bit about carbon cost and how you can plan for different scenarios in the section where Karen walked through the leadership and sustainability tool. And here within Axion, you can play around with those different scenarios. So you can see what editing your volume of production or the amount of biofuel or gas or coal used would do to your projected carbon intensity or decarbonization cost. And this is a really interactive portal, so you can do a lot of different scenario planning or what if modeling to help make different decisions. You also have the ability to filter on the left as well. So if you wanted to hone in on a specific set of facilities or locations, you could do that as well. Next slide. Okay, so now that I've walked through what we have available currently, I do want to give you a little bit of a window into the future. So we're already integrating HIG FEM. So we're fusing who you work with what you buy and what could go wrong, so you can see relationships and risks living in one systems. The idea is materials flowing up into products, flowing into FEM. Put simply, when deep environmental and social data relationships, product and material attributes, purchase orders, and risk all live together, transparency and traceability become a property of the system and not a separate project or product. And I do see there's a quick question in the chat about FSLM. We are working toward integrating social data into Axion as well. So that is coming in this peek into the future. So we really want to start with a relationship graph, which is what you see here on the screen. Every supplier, the programs they're in, their assessments and verifications, and how they engage with the system. And that relationship underpins participation and data visibility across sustainability, compliance, and sourcing. Now integrate what actually moves into this graph that you see. We have purchase orders, materials, production. We can connect specific materials to specific facilities that have taken HIG assessments, and we can join that FEM data to purchase orders for finished goods. And we can render a complete and navigable supply chain map that reflects how your products are really made. And this loops back into product decisions. So with our product tools and insights hub, which sit on top of the map, you can model product scenarios, quantify trade-offs for different material types or different production methods, prioritize interventions at that material and supplier and purchase order level before the design is finalized. And then finally, to add the picture with supply chain risk and opportunity intelligence, we blended all of this data with the external signals and data sets on climate, water, regulation, energy, and then we feed that into Axion. And this is the complete vision of the risk analysis engine to surface hotspots and recommended actions. And we're really excited to move forward with this work, and that this will enable us to support organizations like leadership and sustainability as they support you in risk assessment and mitigation. And then I'll pass it over to Karen.
Thank you so much. It is really a great tool, and lots of opportunities to play around with and test different scenarios. And I really like that that is possible to do. So with that, we have done a lot of the theory, let's say. We have 2 practical examples for you. We have selected 2 companies. You all know them very well. And we think that they have 2 really great examples on how to deal with climate change and how to deal with the climate risk assessment. And so let me first go to Levi's. So Levi's, as you know, has been working on sustainability programs for many years already. And they recognize that climate change is manifesting in altered precipitation patterns, droughts, floods, and storms of increasing frequency and severity, and all impacting directly also their supply chain. So they used the World Resources Institute's Aqueduct Water Risk Atlas to identify also exactly where water stress was greatest across their supply network. And the key finding was that denim manufacturing is very water intensive, and many of their key factories sit in high water stress regions. So what did they do with that? Well, they defined geography-specific supplier targets based on local water stress levels instead of just having a global strategy, increasing the number of products made in what they call waterless facilities and in facilities that recycle and reuse water. So their target was water recycling and reuse, to have 40% recycled and reused water across tier 1 and tier 2 manufacturing by 2030. And the suppliers, they were also supported to implement a set of different technologies, which when used together can reduce the amount of water it takes to finish a pair of jeans significantly. And the measurable results, as of the end of 2023, key suppliers in high-stress regions reported reducing their freshwater use by 27%. This fell short of the 50% target that Levi's had developed, but they had saved more than 7 billion liters of water during that period. Then they are also expanding to communities and watersheds. Their latest strategy expands water stewardship from its plants to the communities in which they operate, with new initiatives focusing also on watershed restoration in supply communities, including specifically Pakistan and Bangladesh, but that will also be expanded over time. And then the new strategy was launched end of 2025, the 2030 Beyond the Blue Water Strategy. By 2030, Levi's aims to cut freshwater use by 15% across apparel and textile suppliers compared to 2022 levels. So another step, with a target of having the 40% of water in manufacturing recycled or reused. And also they plan to release an open source guide to promote responsible water management across the whole apparel industry. And Levi's, as you may know, actually has quite a few really good handbooks for their supply chain. And Levi's says the water climate nexus highlights the interdependencies between water systems, climate change, human development, nature, communities, and business. And I think this is a really, really nice conclusion, because we know there is a big interdependence between many different environmental topics. So it's not only about climate change, it's actually also about water, it's actually also about biodiversity and about air quality. And so I mentioned already the water strategy, but there is also a climate transition plan, a really good plan available for those of you who are interested. And when you receive the presentation, you can then find the document, or you Google them, you will find them easily. And the other example I want to talk about, that is Nike. And as also all of you know, Nike has been engaged with sustainability for many years, and especially for social conditions in the supply chain since the mid-90s. But they were, of course, also affected by climate change at multiple levels of their operating model. Droughts in cotton supplying countries led to price and demand volatility. And then they had partnerships in Vietnam and Indonesia that are at risk of extreme weather conditions, negatively impacting production and the livelihood of workers. And these real disruptions drove Nike to build a systematic response. And their response was the Supplier Climate Action Program, the SCAP, which was launched in May 2020. And the program encourages suppliers to develop comprehensive, company-wide, long-term climate mitigation plans. The goal is to mitigate risks associated with energy, extreme weather events, and government regulations aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and also to increase facility efficiency through use of on-site and off-site renewable energy and elimination of coal from tier 2 suppliers. And I think this is a really good drive that many of the bigger brands in our sector are working on, namely to eliminate the use of coal in the supply chain. So they also support suppliers in setting more ambitious climate goals and helping them identify strategic opportunities tied to the shift to a lower carbon economy. So the real results, the real results in the last 3 years, manufacturing suppliers decreased their proportion of energy coming from coal by 20%, switching to alternatives such as natural gas and sustainable biomass as transitional fuels. And then the SCAP expanded to include suppliers accounting for more than 65% of strategic supplier emissions, covering renewable energy, efficiency, thermal decarbonization, emissions tracking, target setting, and climate risk assessment. And what happened next was that this SCAP program was actually transformed to an industry standard. So working with Cascale and Target, Nike co-developed the Manufacturing Climate Action Program, the MCAP program, designed to give manufacturers a step-by-step guide to decarbonization, integrating emissions measurement, risk assessment, performance benchmarking, and strategic planning into one structured pathway. Some of you may already be engaged with MCAP, but if you are interested, you can always reach out to Cascale. Cascale is now the owner and the manager of the MCAP program. But I really think that this is a very nice example that Nike developed a program by themselves first, tested it themselves, but then they, so to say, gave it to the larger communities. And some of you will know that Nike did a similar thing with the Material Sustainability what is now the Material Sustainability Index, that they handed over to at then Sustainable Apparel Coalition. Yes, I don't know exactly, perhaps 13, 14 years ago, many years ago in any case. But a very nice trend and a very good way to see how actually this sector has grown very much in terms of collaboration and knowledge sharing. So these were the two examples that I wanted to share. And now I would like to move on a bit and just give you a small call to action. your climate assessment and resilience journey starts now. Start by understanding where you stand. A very good start. Know where you are, and then turn your insights into impactful actions and transform, make your organization resilient and more sustainable. And one thing that I also want to really give to you, that is this advice: please do measure what you are doing. Please put up measurable targets. They are so much more helpful if you say, I want to reduce by 20% compared with this year, and then this year is the goal year. And then divide it into annual targets, make your detailed implementation plan, because only that way will you be able to actually reach your results and have measurable results and an impact. Because all of us, we want to have an impact. We want to reduce our sustainability footprint and our climate footprint, of course, as well. And with that, I have one slide about the services of leadership and sustainability. We are strategic advisors. We conduct materiality assessments, develop strategies with our clients. We are also climate experts, and we can support you with training, but also with verification, like, for example, the BRM verification or greenhouse gas verifications. That is our strategy leg, and we also have a supply chain leg where we conduct HIG-FEM, FSLM, Better Cotton, SETI@C, etc., audits and trainings. So with that, I would like to thank you, Caitlin, for joining today and for doing this together with me. Really wonderful. And then, of course, also we thank all the participants for joining. You will receive this presentation and the recording. It will take a few days because we will be traveling a bit. So it will take until, let's say, mid next week, probably. But rest assured, you will receive it by then. And with that, goodbye, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.